Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. The following program is a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com to learn more about this and our other weekly storytelling programs. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Good evening. I'm storyteller Otis Jiry, and I ain't your grandfather. From where I'm from, we don't do bedtime stories. And if that's what you were expecting, you're in the wrong place. If it's terrifying tales you're after, well then, I've got just the thing. Get comfortable, settle in, turn off the lights, if you dare. Your night is about to get a whole lot darker. Who needs sleep anyway?
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another descent into the unknown with scary stories told in the dark. I'm your host, Otis Jiry, and tonight's tales invite you to step through a veil not meant to part, one stitched tight by ritual, regret, and raw, unraveling reality.
Sounds like something's leaking through, Otis, and I don't think it's water. Tonight's collection gives us 5 twisted glimpses into what happens when you look too closely at the cracks in the world and something looks back.
All of tonight's stories comes from When Reality Tears, the upcoming horror collection from author Ross Tyson, available for pre-order now on Amazon, exclusively from our friends at Velox Books. If you enjoy tonight's descent into mind-bending horror, science fiction, and the supernatural, you'll want to check out the full collection and explore more of Velox's terrifying tales while you're at it. But first, a quick invitation. If you prefer your nightmares uncensored and ad-free and early,
Then it's time to join our patrons area. Just $7.99 a month, or even less if you sign a yearly pact with the dark. And you'll unlock access to our full episodes in their uncut form.
visit simplyscarypodcast.com and click Patrons, or head straight to chillingtalesfordarknights.com. Support independent horror and help us keep the screams coming.
Come closer to the dark. We're saving you a seat.
Now then, let's begin. Our first tale comes crashing in with the tide. It follows a man raised in an ancient ritual, a family tradition passed down for generations. But traditions tend to rot when they're soaked in secrets. And some things that wash ashore shouldn't be touched. This is Waves by Ross Tyson, performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. Have you ever just sat on a beach watching the waves crashing into the shore and retreating back out to sea? Have you noticed driftwood or shells being dragged back out, not knowing where they'd end up next? Every morning I sit here, looking out into the ocean where the gray sky meets the dark water on the horizon. I'll wait to see one of them wash in with the tide, drifting up onto the hard-packed sand. As soon as I see them, I run from my position, grabbing them and dragging their limp bodies further up the beach, laying them to rest in the soft sand near the brush-filled dunes. That's when I set to work. It's a ritual I performed since I was a child, being trained by my father, just like his father did for him. I look down at the naked body, always different. Sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, ranging from a younger adult to decrepit and old. Some of these have been thin, some obese. Once the drifter was missing a leg, making the ritual difficult to perform in its entirety. I make do, though. I lay them on their backs, feet facing land and head to the water. Their arms stretched out to their sides like a crucifix position. I know I have to work quickly before they wake up. I've never had the misfortune of seeing it before, but have been told the stories of what happens if they wake before the ritual is complete. The entire island could be erased in a blink of an eye. Generations of work, my bloodline all for naught. I'm getting distracted, sorry. The ritual. While in the crucifix position, I start the runes. Beginning with each foot and hand, I carve the same sequence, moving inward toward the body with the tips of the fingers and toes counterclockwise from the left hand to the feet and finishing with the right hand. My work is methodical. My knife moves in a determined precision, honed with 20 years of practice. Their bloodlines flow blue, staining the sands with an almost neon hue. A scent of ammonia lingered with it. When every limb has been carved, I start at the top of the head, moving from the small bump in the middle of their forehead down toward the chest. They bleed much more when I get to the neck, as one of the runes must cut right across the jugular. Their blood sprays, leaving a shower on the surrounding sand. Some days it mixes with the drizzle of rain, creating a bluish mist that floats across the beach. Finally, the runes are finished. The ritual is almost complete. I lay my knife down and wipe my hand across the drifter's throat, making sure I have enough blood to finish. I swipe their blood across my own forehead, leaving a horizontal line above my eyes, then drawing a vertical line under each of my eyes. This is my war paint. I alone stand against these terrors, protecting my island community and, by extension, the world. The preparations are done. I pick up the knife once more and walk to meet the crashing waves. The final step. My hand dips under the salt water, opening with my palm up. The waves crash in, and as soon as they begin to be pulled back to the sea, I swipe the knife across, letting my own blood flow freely and mix with the water. This is the final offering, the plea to whatever gods rule over the sea to end this monstrosity and keep us safe. The salt water stings as I bring my hand back up, the cold air adding to the pain. My feet slide across the sand as I walk back to the drifter. Lifting the knife, still dripping with a mix of my blood and salt water, I plunge it into the middle of the drifter's chest, into the diaphragm. The same reaction every time. Their eyes snap open. A final, desperate gasp for air, all in vain. I've severed the muscle that allows them to draw breath. They slowly drown as whatever blood is left in them fills their lungs, screaming curses in a language I don't understand. When the ritual is done and the last spasms go through their bodies, I grab a can of gasoline and the herbs I keep in a small shack on the beach. I douse the body, setting it alight and throwing the herbs on top. Like sage for cleansing spirits, the bundle of lavender and catnip smolders, sending wisps of their scent through the air. With this, the drifter is cleansed and the island is safe once more. I head back to the village, taking the beaten path carved into the brush by the generations before me. I exchange nice pleasantries with others as I pass by. They thank me for what I do, protecting us from the drifters. I simply nod and telling them it's my duty, nothing more. I make my way to the village square, heading into the courthouse at the other end. Briggs, our mayor, is waiting for my daily report. He looks up from the papers he's signing as I walk into the room. "Rowley, how are you doing today? Any happenings at the shore?" He shuffles the papers aside and leans back in his seat, monitoring to the chair across from him. I sit down in the stiff leather chair, hearing it squeak under me. There was one, older, male. They're coming more often these days. This is the third this week. When I started 20 years ago, we got one every 2 weeks or so. Should we be worried, sir? His brow furrowed with worry. He was an older man, at least 60. He had lived on the mainland for a while before coming back to the island in his younger years, world-weary and in disbelief at what we had to worry about compared to the outside world. They knew nothing of the drifters, the dangers they posed to our world, the heretic god they served. We'll certainly need to keep an eye on it. The records show that more show up preceding times of trouble. The earliest we've had on record preceded the Black Plague. They were at an average of 2 drifters per day, with the highest number being 5 washing up at once. Your post was manned by 5 watchers around the clock, making sure none went uncleansed. We must be vigilant, make sure this doesn't become a problem like then. Do you think there could be something terrible on the horizon? I asked. I was the only one trained in the ritual. My father had helped me when he was my age, and his father and brothers before him. But I was alone. I had taken no wife, had no children, and my only brother was killed as a child. If they began washing up more often, I was the only defense. Well, as of yet, there's no way to tell. We simply must pay attention. Find someone from the village who shows promise and take them to be trained. You may need help, he answered, waving me off. I got up to walk out. Raleigh? I turned back, giving him a questioning look. He dug around in his desk drawer before withdrawing a long, thin blade in a black scabbard. He pulled the blade out of the sheath by a few inches, showing me a startlingly pristine edge with the runes I used inscribed on it. He sheathed it again and handed it over to me. This has been handed down from elder to elder. If the time comes when there are too many, use this. It allows the ritual to be bypassed. I bowed and thanked him as I took the saber. In all my research and learning about my position, I'd never encountered this before. We had always been told the ritual was the only way. I headed out and back to my house, lost in thought as I walked. I was shaken from my daydreaming by screaming coming from down the path in the direction of the shore. Raleigh! Raleigh! Vale, one of the village teenagers, she was shouting for me in a panicked voice, fear rising to overtake any other emotion. Quick! You have to go to the shore! What's going on? I stopped her as she ran up, panting for breath. She leaned over and grabbed her knees, gasping. Another one. A drifter. Some of the kids were playing in the water and it washed up, she wheezed. I didn't even wait for her to finish. When she said drifter, I took off, sprinting with all the energy I had. They never washed up past noon, rarely ever on daybreak. Even 2 in one day? This is bad. If one wakes up while I'm not there, ruin would follow. Thankfully, it wasn't far to the shore. As I passed over the dunes, I saw the children gather around it. The drifter this time appeared to be a woman, old and covered in wrinkles. One of the children had a stick of driftwood that they were using to poke at it, nudging it as the waves lapped around. Stop! I shouted, waving my arms as the children continued poking. They looked toward me, a quizzical glint in their eyes. Get away from it! It happened in slow motion. The drifter's eyes opened. Their unearthly green hue, like emeralds reflecting a blue sea, shone through the haze. I saw the sharp teeth bare themselves and the hands reach for the nearest child. Long claws tore skin and red blood mixed with ocean spray. I heard the boy scream in pain before turning to a low gurgle as blood filled his throat instead. I wasn't thinking. Instinct took over, and I drew the blade I'd just been given. The runes reflected the gray sky, the sharp edge of the blade shining like the sea. I jumped at the drifter and plunged the blade between its neck and shoulder, stabbing downward through the chest and into the gut. It let out a high screech, and the wind around picked up, intense howling echoing the drifter's cry. The ocean churned in response, sea foam churning into madness, where calm, small waves were before. Die! I screamed. I plunged my hand down into the wound, covering it in blood and painting my face with it. I withdrew the sword, quickly slicing my palm and dipping it into an oncoming wave. The drifter screamed again. Clouds moved in, erasing any light that was left. The weather turned from a gray morning to a small hurricane in moments. I knew this had to end quickly. In one deft movement, I stabbed upward, bringing the blade out of the water and impaling the creature. Right on target. The screams died out along with the wind. Peace had returned to the shoreline. I sat there for a moment, collecting myself before turning to look at the gore mixed with the ocean. The poor boy, his throat torn out, had passed. I took him in my arms and carried him up to dry sand before going back and gathering the drifter's body. I covered the boy with my coat and the creature with gasoline. I wanted it to feel the flames of hell. I sat and watched it burn for a while, long after the local doctor had come and taken the boy, his mother screaming in grief as she watched. I couldn't come up with the words to say I was sorry. I was supposed to protect these people. I was the one who should be dead. When the last ashes had fizzled out, I remained still, wondering what could be done to prevent this from happening again. I didn't know that it would only get worse from here. An account of the discovery of the first drifter. There were 2 more this morning. I was waiting, watching the sea thrash and roll. I'm not sure when I drifted off. The same nightmare that kept me up the night before covered me again, leaving me in fits. I saw the boy's corpse lying in the waves, blood being pulled out with the sea foam. Suddenly the clouds started rolling in, wind whipping up, sand and spray. I saw lightning flash down the shoreline and felt the thunder boom in my chest immediately after. Something was coming. The waves grew taller with each one that crashed ashore. When I looked closer, I saw that it wasn't just water hitting the shore. Drifters, hundreds of them, all tangled into each other in the waves, piling on top of each other as they hit the shore. Levees made of bodies started to block the waves. Suddenly the sky opened above me. The wind stopped. The ocean calmed. The drifters lay in their piles, sleeping like the dead. The eye of the storm. Just as soon as it started, it was over. 1,000,000 eyes snapped open at once. Their screams layered each other, creating an unholy chorus as they awoke and began flooding inland. Right before the flood, I caught a glimpse of the horizon. Gray clouds mired above rolling waves. Through the wind and rain, I could see something moving against the sky, wading through the depths of the water towards my home. I'd seen pictures of skyscrapers, and this dwarfed them. Just as it began to become clear through the sheets of rain, a bolt of lightning struck in front of it. I woke with a start, jumping from the sand and looking in the direction it had been. The flood was gone. The day was gray, but still, just a dream. I shook the sleep from my eyes and resumed my vigil. I spotted one washing in with the waves, male, middle-aged. Other than the bump in the middle of their forehead and the long claw-like nails, he could have passed for a normal islander. I set to work and was almost done with the carving when I heard a voice from behind me. "There's another one." I looked up, startled. No one else came out this early. After what happened, I didn't think anyone would ever come here again. I was surprised even more to see that it was Vale, now nodding toward the shore a ways to my left. I followed her gaze and saw another motionless form crumpled there, sea foam washing over. "Oh, damn it all," I muttered. "Time to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." I left the one I was still working on and walked over to the new arrival. Before grabbing this one, I dunked my hand into the water and sliced my palm, completing this part of the ritual ahead of time. As I began to drag the body back toward the first drifter, Vale ran up and grabbed the other arm, helping me along. "It wasn't your fault, you know," she said, grunting with exertion. "I was nearby when they found it. I should have told them to get away before I came to get you. I didn't even think that they would do something like that. Don't blame yourself, I replied, letting go of the new drifter and kneeling down next to the first. I took out my knife and plunged it into the diaphragm. The piercing scream began, then died out quickly. The new drifter didn't stir. If they're showing up more often, you're going to need help, she said again, still watching, as I doused the first one and struck a match. Teach me. I can handle it. I didn't answer her, but threw the match down and started carving the new drifter. Small sizzles could be heard as ocean spray and light rain hit the burning body. I could still feel Vale's eyes on me, intently watching my hands work the knife through skin, carving my legacy in a living canvas. When the runes were done, I beckoned for her to follow me to the water. She stood beside me as waves lapped over our feet. I looked out at the gray sky and rolling sea, remembering the moment my father brought me out here. How he had carved the ruins, then walked me out to the water. Have you ever lost someone, Vale? I asked her. And she seemed taken aback by the question at first, and looked down at the water as she pondered it. You knew my mother, she said. You know I lost her. You didn't know your mother. She died giving birth to you. Have you ever lost anyone you truly knew and loved? I shot back. Then, no, I guess I haven't. I sighed and unholstered my knife, turning toward her. If you take this on, you will lose someone you love. Maybe more than one. That's what we give up in order to protect the island. Are you prepared to take that on? She seemed scared. Couldn't really blame her. She saw the aftermath of what happened yesterday. She knew what we would be dealing with. But underneath the fear, there was a desperation. Desperation to prove her strength and protect others. I am, she finally answered after staring out at the forming waves. What do I have to do? You're not of my bloodline, but there are certain cases where others can be allowed in to take over. I looked down at my hand, the cut already clotted with blood. I swept the knife across to reopen it. Come, we have to go further out. When we were waist-deep in the water, I handed her the knife. Cut your palm and hold it open, I said. She winced as the sharp edge of steel sliced her hand. The blood flowed quickly, dripping into the water and leaving a red cloud. I held my hand above hers, making a fist, and squeezing so a trickle of blood fell onto her cut. I then opened my own palm, placing it flat on hers so our cuts aligned, and took her hand out under the water. She drew a deep breath in through her teeth as the salt water hit open flesh, but composed herself quickly. I, Raleigh Caros, do hereby pass my bloodline on to Vale Jensen. Having no living children and having taken no wife, I realize that any day my bloodline may die and our cleansing end. Vale has offered herself as a tribute to the ocean, pledging to protect the island and all inhabiting it from the drifters and the heretical gods they serve. Do you accept this duty, Vale? Yes, she replied. I motioned for her to walk further into the water, letting go of her hand. She looked at me, asking, How far? Until the sea takes you, I replied. She nodded, walking further. At about 10 meters out, she was completely engulfed, going under the water. She came up moments later, walking back to my position. Her usually wild, curly hair was now limp and soaked around her shoulders. She shone with a new purpose as she rejoined me. You're aware that with this acceptance, you may never leave the island, being the first and last defense against the unknown. You know that the ocean requires a heavy toll for your service and the power bestowed upon you. Do you still accept? I hoped she'd say no, but knew in my heart she couldn't. It was the same feeling I had, thinking back to when I took the oath. My father standing in my place. Once you had the notion to take on this duty, it never left you. Yes, she said again. Vale Jensen, by the power and authority, being the last remaining of my bloodline, I surrender you to the sea. Today you are born anew in the salt and brine of the ocean. I withdrew my hand from the water, turning my fingers down so the mix of salt water and blood coated my fingertips. I drew the rune of rebirth on her face, a clockwise spiral, ending in a smaller spiral, spinning counterclockwise from the center. The ever-flowing dichotomy of life and the sea. I swear to serve with my life, she replied, giving a small bow. We'll start your training tomorrow, I told her. For now, I will finish this ritual. You'll walk back to the village and stand in the square until I return. Tell anyone that asks you, you are now my apprentice. Yes, sir, she said, walking back up the beach. I sighed as she left, taking myself back up to where the newest drifter lay on the sand. I kneeled next to it, hefting my knife once more. I placed it above the diaphragm, one hand holding it steady while the other was poised above it, ready to thrust downward. I bowed my head, closing my eyes and whispering a prayer. Protect her. Let me be the father to her I could never be to my own daughter, I muttered. My hand raised up, tensing at the expectation of pain when I hit the knife handle. It was more surprised to feel the hand on my wrist as it moved downward. My eyes snapped open to see the drifter grabbing on, holding my hand back. Our numbers are infinite, it said. We serve and we shall be rewarded. We will devour you, drown you in the blood of your beloved ones. We are vast as the ocean and relentless as the waves. We will break you. The pure hatred in its eyes terrified me. I'd never seen anything like it. The pure, dripping spite. It bore through my skin and into my soul. It despised me, and that cold, unfeeling stare almost seemed to freeze the entire world. I forced myself to move as it opened its mouth wide to scream, making the wind pick up and clouds go dim. My other hand plunged the knife in. Its screams turned to wet gurgles as it drowned, choking on blood. I fell back in the sand, shaking. After what seemed like eternity, I pulled the knife from its chest and got the gas can and herbs, beginning the final step of cleansing. I didn't stay to make sure the fire was put out, but instead rushed back up the path to the village, stopping at the first person I saw. Hello, Raleigh. Can I do anything for you? He said. I didn't remember his name, but I recognized him from the butcher shop in town. I need you to go to the shore and keep watch. If any wash up, come get me. I'll be speaking to Briggs in his office. He looked at me quizzically, not quite understanding why I would want an untrained person watching the shore. I ended up losing my temper. Just go, I shouted. He tore off up the path, leaving a dust cloud behind him. I rushed into the square, grabbing Vale, who was standing in the middle, chatting with some of the village women who were congratulating her. We barged into the office to Briggs' surprise. Rowley, you didn't tell me you'd chosen an apprentice already. I should have had I cut him off before he finished. What is happening, Briggs? I shouted, causing both him and Vale to wince in return. One of those damn things grabbed me and spoke. They've never spoken before. His eyes grew wide. I could see Vale bring a hand to her mouth next to me. Briggs sat back in his chair, reaching into a drawer and pulling out a tall bottle filled with dark amber. He produced 3 glasses from the same drawer and started pouring. I'm sorry for overstepping your authority, he said, raising the glass to his lips and sloshing half of it down his shirt from shaking hands. I'd hoped this wouldn't happen while I was in charge. I guess I hoped for too much. He drained his glass, then got up and walked over to a portrait on the wall. Pulling the portrait up and setting it down on the floor, he revealed a safe behind it. He opened it and pulled out a large, leather-bound book, yellowed with age. The next item he revealed was an old flintlock pistol. Everything you'll need to know is in there, he said, motioning to the book. I'm sorry, but it's just too much. Too much? I asked him, getting to my feet. I don't know what the hell's going on, Briggs. Don't tell me how it's too much. Did I ever tell you about my travels as a youth? Briggs spoke quietly, not making eye contact. I spent a lot of time on ships going from port to port and trading goods. Saw a lot in those days, the beauty of nature out in the high seas, and the terror of it. I know you're aware of what it's like to lose someone you love, Raleigh. I lost the woman I loved, desperately grabbing for her, hanging over the side of our boat as she was dragged under. It's things like that you never forget. He raised the gun to his temple and cocked the hammer. I barely had time to grab Vale and avert her eyes when he pulled the trigger. Warm blood and sharp skull fragments sprayed over us. Past 24 hours have been a blur. I only remember walking Vale out into the square, both of us spattered with blood and gray matter. Everyone was looking at us, some screaming, some crying. I sat Vale down on a beach and motioned for a nearby woman to come over. "Take care of her. If she's not in shock yet, she will be soon," I said, then turned to walk back into the building. "Also, call for a doctor. I'll need his help moving Briggs." The smell had already gotten bad inside. Copper, sharp. It took me by surprise after dealing with the ammonia-tinged blood of the drifters for so long. I looked down at Briggs's body, small wisps of steam rising from the open wound as cold air drifted in. "Cowardly bastard," I muttered to his body. For probably the first time since my father had brought me out to the beach, I was scared. I had seen the soul drain from Briggs's face when I told him about the drifter speaking. He knew things I never did, things that he didn't want to face. But what? The book was still lying on the desk where he left it, now covered in a messy layer of gore. I grabbed a nearby cloth and wiped it clean, trying my best to get all the pieces of brain and skull off. Runes were emblazoned on the cover, some of them I'd never seen before. I opened the book and began reading. The pages were old and yellowed, with spots here and there from where the ink had been spilled and what I think was blood. There were illustrations of drifters, which included detailed notes on their anatomy and physiological traits. The next page showed the rune configurations as well as the carving of the ritual. I had just begun to flip through to another when there was a knock on the door. "Raleigh, what the hell happened here?" Garth, our local doctor, was standing in the doorway with a handkerchief held over his face. He gazed around the room in horror before settling on Briggs's body. "Oh, God, Briggs. You know anything about this at all?" I asked him, drawing his eyes to the book. He shook his head, looking instead at the flintlock pistol, still clutched in Briggs' hand. "So he did this to himself?" "Yeah. Told him about the drifter who had just spoke while I was doing the ritual. He handed me this book and blew his goddamn brains out. Haven't seen anyone that terrified since, well, your brother." Gareth finished my thought. "Go, Raleigh. I'll take care of this. I know this brings back painful memories for you." He moved from the doorway, revealing that Vale was standing behind him, still with a look of shock on her face. I snatched the book off the desk and walked briskly out, grabbing her arm and turning her from the grisly scene. There were tear tracks through the blood on her face. We walked in silence toward her home. When we finally reached it, I sent her inside to clean up and sat on the porch to look further into the book. The first half seemed to be all things I already knew about the ritual, the drifter's anatomy, a cipher of the ruins. Then something different caught my eye. It was another illustration, but this one of a human. Multiple drawings of the same person, but the subtle changes between each one. Initially, it was a lengthening of nails and teeth, small gills growing in near the nape of the neck, then the eyes turning. I don't know what they used to capture the color of the eyes in the illustration, but it was hauntingly lifelike. The next page held notes and more illustrations. Large ships at sea during a storm being rocked by the waves. The figures standing in the water, towering above them, then the ships being torn asunder by the wind and surf. One survivor of a cargo ship, Fate's Rest, a man by the name of William Stettler, noted that before the ship sank, he witnessed a looming giant on the horizon. I remembered my dream. The giant looming behind the waves of drifters, a general commanding his army. Stettler swears he saw this figure smash the ships with his own hands, causing all on board to fall in the water. Here, he says, they were set upon by people who looked just like them, save for a small bump in their foreheads and elongated claws and teeth. Stettler says these figures would drag the surviving crew and passengers under the water, never to resurface. The book went on to explain how Stettler had survived. He was knocked out by a plank of wood hitting him in the water and managed to wash up on the island, much like the drifters do. When the watchman on the shore at the time found him, he was almost cleansed with the ritual, only saved because his blood was red instead of blue. Safe to say, this was a surprise for the watchman. Stettler joined the watch through marriage eventually, choosing to stay on the island instead of going back to his home on the mainland. He is responsible for one of the greatest breakthroughs in our understanding of the drifters. 10 years after the accident, and Stettler was on duty keeping watch one morning, when a drifter washed in, he moved to retrieve it as he normally would, but was frozen with fear upon looking at the face. Phil walked back outside, looking at me with concern as she wrung water from her hair. "What are we going to do?" she asked, sitting down next to me. I didn't answer, still reading and rereading the same sentence. Stettler recognized his brother, Jacob Stettler, who he had seen last dragged under the surface 10 years previous. He hadn't aged, and the only difference was the small bump on his head. "Vale," I said, looking at her, "there are things I'm still learning along with you, things that may cause me to falter in the coming days and weeks. I need you to promise me that if I hesitate, you will step in and finish the job." "I promise," Phil said, still looking concerned. "What's going to happen, Raleigh?" Just then, someone came running up the path, shouting my name. I recognized the same man I'd stationed at the shoreline, out of breath and wild-eyed. "Please, come quickly. It's going into the village." He stopped in front of the house, panting and shaking. "Calm down. What the hell do you mean?" I asked, jumping from my chair. "And how did you know I was here?" "Doc Garrett told me you were taking Vale home. I saw Briggs." He almost looked like he was going to vomit when he said it, thinking of the mess in Briggs' office. "A drifter washed up on the shore. I saw it and started coming to get you, but then it spoke to me. It asked where you were, Raleigh." "Good Lord," I said, beginning to gather my things and start back toward the village. He stopped me again before I could walk off. "No, Raleigh, this one, it ain't like the others," he said, waving his hands frantically in front of him. "It's him, Raleigh. I don't know how, but it's him." "Who? God damn it. Who is it?" Vale was shouting at him now, trying to make sense of the whole situation. "River," the man whispered, looking down at the ground. I stopped dead in my tracks. I couldn't move. There was no way it could be him. He was gone, dead, his body never found. This guy just didn't remember what he looked like. I was confused. "Who the hell is River?" Vale asked, getting impatient for the lack of answers. I turned to look at her, grabbing the rune-inscribed blade from my bag in the process. I handed it over to her. "You don't know the ritual yet, and I may not be able to see this one through," I said. "Will anyone please tell me what's going on? I can't help when I'm in the dark here." Phil was practically screaming now, tearing at her hair. "Who in the hell is River, and why are you so worried about him?" I felt tears forming in my eyes as I looked at her. Hot bile burned in my throat, and I almost choked on the words as they came up. River was my brother. Silence smothered us as we walked back to the village square. I was beyond lost. It hit me when I read the book that something like this could be possible, but I didn't think it would happen this soon. Phil was certainly worried, alternating between shooting me looks of concern and looking down at the blade I'd given her. Finally, she spoke. What did you mean that he was your brother? What happened? I knew that she needed to know. Knew that she was only asking so she could be prepared. I resented it all the same. I had grieved River since the day I had lost him, and it was only compounded by losing Dad days later. Did my dad know about this? Is that why? Is that why he did? Makes sense you don't remember it. You would have been very young. I finally replied, the words sounding as if they were coming from somewhere far away. River was out with Dad and I one day keeping watch. He was playing in the water while Dad and I were patrolling. He was there 1 second and gone the next. I don't know if it was a riptide or something else. He was just gone. So you never found his body? Vale whispered. I could feel the chill in her voice. She realized where this was going. It was 12 years ago, Vale. He was 6 years old. We never found him. There was a noticeable shakiness in my voice as I started to say what I feared. Dad blamed himself. Or maybe he knew the truth. Either way, he killed himself that night. Walked right out to the beach, stood in the waves, and slashed his own throat. Oh, dear God. Vale let out a small gasp. I found him the next morning. Tide was going out when he did it, so he didn't wash away. He was just lying there in a tide pool of his own blood. My voice cracked. Remembering that day, I could still feel the cold rain stinging as it hit my skin, the wind scraping my face. Sitting in the pool of his own blood and shaking him, hoping he would wake up. I just sat there until I saw a drifter wash up. Then I had a duty. Something I was the only one fit for. Only I could do until now. The village square was in sight now. I could see a crowd of people gathered around, all holding on to each other and staring at something in the middle. I stopped in the path, causing Vale to almost run into me. She hefted the blade in its sheath and looked at me expectantly as I turned to her. Remember what I told you. Step in if you falter. She nodded to me as she said it. If she was scared, she wasn't going to show it. Her gray eyes were like the steel of the blade. She was well suited for this. If I make any sign of weakness, of not being able to do this, kill it, I said, reaffirming. I can't promise emotion won't get the better of me. If I move to stop you, cut me down. Rowley. She looked shocked at this, but the resolve returned moments later. Okay. We walked the remaining 100 yards or so into the square, the crowd parting as we came. As the last of them moved, I could see what they'd been staring at. A boy no older than the day he had disappeared, standing in the middle of the square. He had the signature bump of the drifters and pointed fingernails and teeth. Nothing had changed. He still had the short-cropped haircut that Dad had given him just days before he disappeared, and I could see the small slits in his neck where gills had taken shape. He gave me a sharp smile as I approached. You grew up, he said. His voice was more guttural than I remembered. The innocence of a child's voice was gone, replaced by menace and bloodlust. I missed you, big brother. River, I replied simply. I could feel hot tears stinging my eyes. I knew he was dangerous. He could rip me to pieces in seconds if I let my guard down. It didn't change the fact that he was my brother once. He still looked like that 6-year-old boy who disappeared in the waves. You don't seem as happy as I thought you would. I was hoping for more of a reunion, he replied. He looked around at the crowd that was still looking on, staring at him in horror. What? I feel like you're all scared of me. What happened to you, River? I managed to choke out. I was showing weakness. No doubt he'd try to take advantage of this. The ocean takes all of us, eventually, he replied. Some of us earlier than others. You and Dad didn't keep your eyes on me, and now here I am. I've come back for you, though. I wanted to show you all the wonderful things I've learned, all the amazing sights and feelings. They've taught me a lot in these few years I've been gone. Who? I asked. The others, like me, of course. There are quite a few of us, as I'm sure you've noticed in the past few days. We've been busy, recruiting, creating, swelling our ranks. We bring more to him, and he makes them like us. I'm sure I can put in a good word for you. Oh, River, this isn't you. I was talking more to myself at this point than him. I didn't want to believe that this was my brother, what he had become. Didn't want to believe he could be this monster. You wouldn't know who I am, he roared, causing dark clouds to roll in and the wind to rise. I looked around, motioning everyone to stand back. I noticed then that Vale was no longer beside me. Please, brother, let's not do this. Come back to us. You don't have to be this way, I said to him, trying to look around for Vale without him noticing. I finally spotted her in the crowd of people slowly moving her way through the masses, trying to flank River. I had to keep him distracted. There's no going back now. This island won't exist for much longer. All will be swallowed by the ocean soon enough. You'll all join us, or drown. Some of you have a choice, some don't. He took a step forward, opening his arms toward me. I wanted to bring you with me, Raleigh. To extend an offer. I can bring you with me, and you can be made new, quick, painless. I want to help you, I continued. Vale was almost behind him. Just another minute and she'd be in place. Oh, but I want to help you, River sneered back at me. Vale looked at me and nodded. Now. I lunged forward at the same time she did. She with the blade drawn, I with my knife. All I could see before striking was River's twisted smile. Vale struck just right, stabbing right into his spine. My knife found its mark in his throat, cutting any sound from him short. He managed to get 2 good swipes of his claws in, one striking Vale across the face, leaving 4 long, jagged ravines of open flesh from her left eye down to her chin. The other hand managed to catch me in the stomach, knocking the wind out of me and gouging into my flesh. I felt his hand tighten into a fist, closing around whatever internal organs he could. "Get some rope!" I shouted at the onlookers. 2 of them ran toward the nearest building and found a halfway weaved fishing net that had been left there in the excitement of the day, throwing it to Vale and me. We quickly wrapped it around River, making sure he was bound right before cutting a strip of fabric from my sleeve, stuffing it into his mouth. There. No storms if he can't scream, I said. Sitting back on the ground and clutching my stomach, I looked down to assess the damage and could see heavy bleeding as well as some of my insides where they shouldn't be. Garth! Where's Garth? Vale ran to my side, taking off her coat and applying pressure to my stomach. Her eye was swollen shut at this point. She'd be lucky to see out of it again. Vale! Help him, please! I was gasping at this point. The adrenaline was wearing off and the pain was taking over. The last thing I saw before passing out was Vale, tears mixing with the blood on her face, and River smiling at me on the ground. I'm awake again. It's been 2 days since we subdued River. Garth patched me up as best he could, but the diagnosis is grim. River managed to do some damage while he was in there. Vale told me she has him locked away in Briggs' office. Said he's tied up in there, smiling at anyone who comes by. Half her face is covered in bandages. Garth said her eye should heal, but she'll never regain 100% of her sight. I've been researching the book, she says, telling me. She's learned the runes and memorized the ritual. She said there's also some talk of an older ritual, one from long ago, talked about by long-gone ancestors. Something that may be able to put a stop to all of this once and for all. That God, I guess you could call it, Vale says. The giant that creates them? There's the thought here and there by whoever put this together. They translated from some ancient notes left behind by the first inhabitants of our island. Whoever wrote this thinks that if 2 sacrifices are made, then he can be weakened and bound under sea. She went on explaining this further, but I was drifting in and out from pain. Eventually, Garth came back in and gave me a new dose of medicine. It didn't do much for the pain, but it sedated me. I'm in and out now. Vale is working on figuring out this ritual. If she can crack it, we may just have a way to end all of this. I just hope I'll live to see it. Hell came to our island. Death came to our island. It was beginning to get dark outside. I was still recovering, hoping for the medicine that Garth had given me to kick in soon so I didn't have to feel this throbbing pain nearly as much. I flipped through the book as I waited, the lamp beside me causing the pages to almost glow yellow. There were notes scribbled in the margins wherever they'd fit, all in different handwriting. I had to wonder if these were written by cleansers before me. How old was this book? What happened to all these people if they had these notes and theories about the end, but still couldn't bring it about? Was there something we weren't seeing in all of this? I flipped the page again and noticed that there were no notes scribbled for the first time in at least 100 pages. Instead, there was just one stanza of a poem, like a prophecy being laid out before me, written in beautiful script. When the waves ride high and oceans flood, rain and wind howl, filled with blood, into the sea, brothers of red and blue, ending water's wrath, beginning days anew. Holy hell, I said under my breath. This was it. This was the answer. This was how to stop everything. Raleigh, wake up! He stirred from the bed against the opposite wall, still in a drugged stupor. Garth had said his condition wasn't promising. When River plunged his hand in, he had severed quite a few of his intestines, causing massive internal bleeding. Gareth did as much as he could, but he wasn't outfitted for major surgery on this level. Raleigh turned to me, eyes barely open. "Josephine?" he mumbled, looking at me in surprise. "Are you there to take me away? You've grown so much." "No, Raleigh, it's me, Vale," I said. "Garth had told me he may hallucinate due to the medicine. I've found it, Raleigh." "I'm not ready, Josephine," he muttered back. Tears stung my eyes, seeing this man broken. He had protected our island for so long, brought me under his wing without a question. I cried a little more as tears tracked their way across my still-open wounds. There came a soft knock at the door as Garth walked in, holding another vial of medicine and an armful of clean bandages. He looked at me as Raleigh muttered for Josephine once more. "Poor man. He hasn't spoken about her in years," Garth said. "Who's Josephine?" I asked him. He let out a sigh and sat next to the bed, beginning to dress Raleigh's wounds again. "The only person he ever loved," Garth replied. "Josephine was his daughter." "Where is she now?" "Whatever heaven you believe. She only lived for an hour after birth, passed away not long after her mother," he answered. "I think that's why he took to you so well. You reminded him of what he lost." I couldn't hold it back any longer. Tears began to flow freely, stinging my wound even worse than before. I had no family. My mother died during childbirth. My father was killed not long after my conception. The village raised me, and Raleigh had always been there, offering advice or helping where he could. Now here he was, dying just a few feet away. Garth finished wrapping the new bandages and stood up, handing me the vial. "Give this to him when he wakes up. It'll help with the pain." He patted me on the shoulder as he began to walk out the door. Raleigh stirred. "Garth," he muttered. "Garth, I need to go." He turned back around, looking to Raleigh. "Rest, old friend. You'll be safe until you're ready," he said. As I opened the door to step outside, a scream burst the air. Rising wind followed it within seconds. "Drag them to the waves," came another voice, this one guttural, like the sound of rocks scraping against the ocean floor. Bring them to Panthalison, so he may shape them in his image." "Oh, dear God," Garth said, stepping back inside and slamming the door. "There's a horde of them out there." More screams cut through the air, causing the wind to strengthen once more. I could hear rain begin to pound on the door of the small hut. The walls creaked as they were moved. Raleigh stirred yet again, suddenly more alert. "What's happening? Where's the blade?" He began to sit up, then screamed out in pain, falling back on the bed. "Gareth, I have to get out there." "I'm afraid I can't do that, brother," Gareth told him, pacing the room in thought. "They've never come this far inland, other than river, of course. I don't like this. They'll find us soon enough." As if on cue, the door was kicked open. A towering drifter barged his way in, claws tearing at the doorframe. It screamed at the sight of them, bringing more heavy rain into the hut. "Back away, Garth," I whispered, moving my hand down to the blade still sheathed at my side. He dove aside, leaving a straight path. I had to make sure I was on target, even with my crippled eyesight. I drew the blade slowly, leaning forward and focusing on the diaphragm area, just like Raleigh had shown me that day on the beach. It ran forward, rushing at me with arms held wide, claws brandished. I lunged forward, stabbing upward toward it. I missed. It screamed in pain as the blade struck in the middle of the ribcage, above the diaphragm. I heard the bone crack as it was cleaved in two. The drifter fell on top of me, teeth gnashing as it tried to recover. I moved my other hand to the hilt of the blade, grasping it and starting to saw downward. The drifter threw its head forward, attempting to bite down on my neck as I moved to the side under it, furiously working the blade lower. I heard the final gasp as I hit my target. The drifter collapsed, twitching. Gareth ran forward to help roll it off me as I pulled the blade free, splattering blue blood on the walls. "Vale, are you okay?" Raleigh asked, sitting up slowly this time, so as not to hurt himself. He still winced in pain. "Raleigh, thank God," I said, moving over to him. "Look, I found how we can stop this. We have to get River." I grabbed the book from the table nearby, flipping to the poem. I shoved it toward Raleigh to read. "Brothers of Red and Blue." "That can't mean us, can it?" he asked, looking up at me. "I think so," I said. I could see the fear in his face. He was putting all of this together, the same puzzle I'd pierced together just hours ago. The wind was constant now, a continuous roar, a monster tearing the island apart. A board was torn from the roof, leaving an opening for rain to begin pouring through. "Help me up, Garth," Raleigh said, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "We need to go get my brother." I hefted the blade, getting ready to make our run across the square. Garth stood, holding Raleigh up on his shoulders. We exchanged a small nod before running out of the hut and into the chaos. The square was bathed in red. Drifters were dragging bodies out of homes, taking no care if they cut them open or not. Anyone who resisted was torn open, treated as a game by the attacking monsters. I could see one in the distance grabbing a woman away from her screaming wife, slashing her throat so blood covered the woman she loved. It let out a demented laugh before lunging at the other women. We made our way through, dodging what we could and trying to cut through what we couldn't. We finally reached the door of Briggs's office, busting it in and charging through. River sat there in the center of the room, staring toward us, a smile playing behind the gag over his mouth. "Grab and run," I said, looking toward Garth and Raleigh. I took hold of the chair River was in and began dragging it out into the storm. We tried to go around the perimeter of the square and toward the path to the beach so as not to be seen. A drifter chased someone out into our path, stopping as it saw us. I charged forward, stabbing it through the eye this time. It fell to the ground, shrieking, causing the storm to strengthen. When we finally made it to the path, I saw that we didn't have far to go. The amount of drifters congregating on the island and the chaos they were bringing had caused a storm surge, bringing waves crashing just a few hundred yards away. The dunes were gone. Now the island just consisted of the square and the surrounding area. "Oh, it's time, brother," Rivers shouted over the chaos. I looked back to see he had chewed through the gag, allowing him to talk once more. "There is our God, waiting just as promised." I looked in the distance to see an inky silhouette on the horizon, moving ever closer to our position. With every stride, it sent a towering wave toward us, taking more of the land for its own. Drifters were frothing in the waves, moving closer to the square. There had to be hundreds, all crashing on top of each other as they scrambled to be first to the feeding. They stopped as they saw us. "Set me down," Raleigh said. Garth gave him a look to confirm what he was asking, then a small nod before setting him to his feet. Raleigh came over to me, then putting his hands on my shoulders. "Whatever happens, I want you to know how proud I am," he said. He deftly slipped the blade away from me, hiding it in his coat pocket. "Well, brother, does your offer still stand? Will you take me to the sea?" "I thought you'd never ask." Rivers smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Raleigh walked over to him, holding his knife to the rope and snaring him. "I will set you free, but you must promise me you will not harm them." Raleigh was wheezing with the effort of standing on his own. Rivers simply nodded in return. With a quick flick of the knife, his restraints fell all around him. They walked together toward the water, Rivers shouting to the other drifters in victory. When they were waist deep, he turned to Raleigh. "Raleigh, Pantaleon." He motioned to the giant figure, features still obscured by the wind and rain that seemed to emanate from him. "The great sea, ruler of all beneath the waves, I bring you a sacrifice, the last of the cleansing line." He turned to face Raleigh, looking at him as he did the same. "I've waited so long, Raleigh." He thrust his hand forward, impaling Raleigh through the heart. He let out a gasp, leaning forward on his brother. River took him in a great hug, bringing him close. Raleigh wrapped his arms around him in return. "I as well," I heard him say. He flipped the blade from his pocket and held it to River's back, hugging him tight with one arm before thrusting toward himself. River let out a noise of surprise as he and Raleigh were joined by the blade. The drifters standing around began to scream and writhe, causing the wind to rise with them. Suddenly, they stopped. Garth grabbed my arm and pulled me back away from the water as we watched. The two brothers, their blood mixing on the blade and running into the water, seemed to melt away into a pool of red and blue. It only took moments for them to disappear completely, the color in the water branching out further toward the crowd of drifters. When they were touched by the blood, the drifters turned to water. With each new mass, a rising wave was formed, holding its place as a wall of water at the shoreline. I could almost make out the two brothers in the middle of it, still locked in their death embrace, translucent in their new state of being. When all the drifters had been reached, it was a towering tsunami standing at the ready. Pantaleon stood in the distance, the storm still swirling around him. He hefted his fist, crashing it down into the water and sending his own wave forward. The great tsunami rushed to meet it, absorbing it as they collided. It picked up speed as it moved ever closer to the sea god, rolling with fury. There was a loud crash as it smashed into the giant, knocking him from his feet. I saw it try to get back up and regain its footing, but as it did, tendrils of water shot forward from the surface, ensnaring it at every possible point. Finally, two tendrils, one red and one blue, shot forward to wrap around the ancient neck of the sea, pulling it first to its knees, then under the surface forever. We've started taking count and burying the dead now. The island is destroyed, houses gone completely. It appeared as though we had suffered a direct hit from a hurricane. I was walking along the beach earlier when I spotted something shining in a tide pool. As I ran forward to look, I was able to make out the hilt of the time blade. The blade itself was broken, nothing but jagged splinters after a few inches, but I kept it anyway. It's to remember the father I had only had for a short time. The man who gave his life for us as long as he lived. I know when the waves crash in, it's him telling me that he's still there, keeping the evil at bay in death as he did in life. Thank you, Raleigh. That was Waves by Ross Tyson.
And believe it or not, folks, that's just the beginning. Tonight's tales come straight from Ross Tyson's upcoming horror collection, When Reality Tears, terrifying tales of horror, science fiction, and the supernatural.
17 chilling case files, each documenting a different kind of reality failure. From glitching ghosts to gods in the ocean deep, from Civil War time loops to stars that change the ones you love.
Side effects may include nightmares, paranoia, and permanent alterations to your perception of reality.
You can pre-order When Reality Tears now on Amazon. It's available August 15th from Velox Books, just $17.95 for the paperback or $2.99 on Kindle.
If you've got a taste for cosmic horror, science fiction nightmares, and terrifying truths hidden in plain sight, do yourself a favor and pre-order now. Save yourself a few bucks, and maybe even your soul.
Now, let's move forward into the fog of war and the ghosts it left behind. Our next tale rides into the haunted heart of the past, where the Civil War has ended, but it still echoes and lingers. One man searches for his brother and finds a battlefield that refuses to forget.
Some wounds don't bleed anymore, but they still burn. This one's about legacy, guilt, and the ghosts that never left the island. This is May Fallen Stars Guide Us Home by Ross Tyson, performed by me, Malcolm Blackwood.
All right, off the wagon. I ain't taking any animal of mine through here.
The rough voice came through my dreams, but didn't quite register. There was a light approaching in my dream. Something beautiful. A star, maybe?
I said off.
Pain started in my shoulder, and my stomach dropped as I hit empty space. I barely had time to register my dizziness before my fall. I briefly saw the hanging lantern spinning in a rush before I crashed to the damp ground below, taking a faceful of grass and soil. I pulled myself up, spitting out dirt and trying to ascertain my whereabouts. Water was splashing in the distance. Were we finally there?
You're on your own.
The driver didn't even look at me as he climbed back up on the wagon, barely giving a thought as he started off and left last words trailing back to me.
If your brother was there, he's probably dead. You do have my condolences.
Stop. Stop thinking about it. I couldn't believe him dead. He had signed up without hesitation, leaving me back home with the choice to stay or follow. I felt the twinge of pain in my ankle where it had been broken, keeping me home and apart from him. We had been a team since I could remember, storytellers from the beginning. I was brought back to the present by a howl coming from the nearby forest. The small port lay ahead, lanterns burning low, barely illuminating the encroaching darkness as their reflection played off the dark river ahead, making eyes in murky water that followed me as I walked. I could see a glow coming off Tybee, dim against the dense forest of the island. Whether he was here or not, that would be my last stop on this journey. I started walking after grabbing my belongings off the ground, though it wasn't much other than some dried beef and a canteen in my bag, alongside the small Bowie knife he had given me 3 Christmases ago, still shining bright as the day it met my hands. I gripped the cold leather on the hilt as the small tavern overlooking the port neared, hesitating as the hand under my long coat gripped the knife hilt while I pushed the door open. Sound hit me in waves as the smell of beer and tobacco hit me harder, overpowering my senses and almost knocking me over like the breakers crashing below. My grip loosened as I moved, stepping into the tavern's warm embrace. The smell of roasting meat and baking bread overpowered the alcohol finally, and I relaxed my hand on the dagger. There was a friendly-looking girl standing at a nearby counter, filling a glass from a massive bottle of dark liquor. "Be right with you, sweetheart," she shouted to me, taking the glass over to a table where one man sat alone. He gave her a nod and a smile as she walked back to me. The first thing I noticed was the blue army coat he wore, buttons fraying off. The second thing I noticed was the massive scar running down his face, only separated by the eye patch covering what I assume was his now vacated socket. The barmaid was suddenly in front of me, flashing a bright smile and giving me a warmer welcome. "All righty, darling. You looking for food, booze, a room, or the whole deal?" I snapped back, trying to pretend I wasn't staring intently at the man. The squalor around us made a decent enough cover as I took a seat at the bar. She couldn't be older than 15 and looked to be running this place herself. Don't know how she managed, but she was standing at attention with a hand ready on a spatula behind her, waiting for something on the stove to finish. Drink, please. Cider if you have it," I said, though she didn't catch me at first. I tried yelling it louder when she finally understood me, moving back with a fresh glass from the nearby shelf to a cask at the far end. A soft, pink-orange liquid poured into the glass and foamed up. Peach cider. Hadn't had that in a long time. Not since meeting him here in the city all those years ago. Lost myself again for a moment before she handed me the cider, looking expectantly at me for any other questions. "I need to get over to the island. Do you know if a boat is running in the morning?" I shouted across at her again. I saw her face pale, turning the shade of a new moon. Looked like one of those ghosts in the stories he would tell me. "Hell, sir, ain't nobody wanted to go to the island in years. Not since Sherman, at least." A general hush fell over the nearby patrons when she said that, bringing them to glare at whoever had said the name before realizing it was the girls supplying them booze, overriding their cares about the union with love of alcohol. Chambers takes people on occasion, but he usually ends up coming back alone. There are still bodies out there that just couldn't be brought back. My papa's probably one of them. So what Mama says, at least. She pointed toward the scarred man in the back, wearing the blue colors that seemed to be so prominent around these parts. I didn't see many back home displaying their blues out in the open, even back in the swamps. Hell, nobody wore their grays when we were back in Boston just a few years ago. This guy was either a hero or an absolute bastard, and I wasn't ready to find out. She spoke, even though I already knew what she was going to say. "He might be willing to help you." I nodded to her in thanks before taking my cider, walking over to the man as he trained his eye on me. I had seen the waters down past Florida once when I was young, where the water was the bluest thing on earth I'd ever seen. That's what was in this man's eye as I waded into its unknown depths. He swore under his breath as I approached. "Damn it, Millie, what?" he asked in a voice like the shale outside was scraping his throat. I saw the beard growing gray under his sunken blue eye now, teeth missing and nose awkwardly cut short at the tip. 2 cavalry sabers sat on the seat next to him, uninviting anyone nearby. I took a gulp of my cider before sitting across from him. "I need your help," I started out before he waved a hand and cut me off. He took a sip of his liquor, not showing any sign of tasting the pungent alcohol that even I could smell coming off of it across the table.
You won't untie me? Go screw yourself.
He started, still training his eye on me before going in again.
I've stopped taking people like you there to survey the land. You never pay up front, then you die before you can pay me. The government can either bring in some actual troops to figure things out over there, or just do what Sherman should have and finish his damn march.
He finally left off, taking a deep breath before chugging more of his drink in a quick gulp. I'm not looking for anything like that. I need to know if someone was there. I started in before seeing his face change from anger to pity.
Crap.
He sat back in his chair, raising a hand and rubbing his scruffy hair back. He stroked his beard and looked at me, sizing me up. I looked back at him, never moving my gaze from his eye.
My condolences. Who was it, if I might ask?
It was my turn to hesitate, wondering what I should tell him based on the coat over his shoulders. He must have noticed my apprehension because he patted the coat fondly before dropping it down his back, letting the tattered grays show under it.
I ain't a traitor to the Union, if that's what you're wondering.
He gave a half-hearted laugh as I eased back a bit in my seat.
No, I picked this off a particularly nasty bastard I had a grudge with, and one coat ain't keeping me as warm nowadays. I'd stand up so you could see where I took my grudge, but we all bleed red in the end. Someone in the war, I take it?
I know it's a lot to ask. I hadn't expected such a level of observation, nothing I could have ever imagined in this barnacle-soaked coast outside Savannah. I had to steady myself, preparing to tell him the truth. I'm looking for a soldier. He was... I bit my tongue almost rather than say it.
He is a Negro, sir.
He fought for Sherman. The last message I got from him was that he was stationed on the island until things were settled. He never came back after.
If and he was one of Sherman's, he's a brother of mine. I was part of the march, too.
He took another drink, throwing his head back and draining the glass.
Ceasefire was barely a week old when the stars fell.
I know he's probably not alive. I've heard the stories about the island. I started mouthing off whatever I could to tell him I knew the risks. I had to go. I made a promise, even just borrowing a boat. His face softened as he looked at me. I tried to concentrate my gaze on the cider, but couldn't stop tears from dropping in, making ripples as the cider fizzled. There was a boulder sitting right behind my tongue and threatening to let loose a landslide if any pebble of a word slid through.
I was there,
he offered up. Looking me in the eye, he nodded as if to reinforce his point.
I know what you're going to find, but I owe the dead there some respect. If that means bringing peace to one of their friends, that's a start.
He stood now, hoisting the two sabers off the other chair and tightening their belt around his waist. He looked at me expectantly, still sitting with my cider and looking at him. I couldn't believe he had agreed so easily to take me, much less than he had empathy for my plight. If he was out there, he was smiling at me when I entered that tavern. I didn't get your name, sir, I choked out, at least hoping I could thank the man who would be helping me. He simply smiled, crooked and gap-toothed, back.
Call me Chambers.
He held out a hand to shake, which I accepted before realizing he was missing the ring finger on it. He laughed as he shook my hand, noting my surprise. Alan, I said back to him, still choking back words while trying to hide behind my cider. He finished tightening the belt, picking up a blunderbuss alongside it. He looked at me as I stood, sizing me up.
You bring a weapon with you, Alan?
He asked, slinging the blunderbuss over his shoulder. I noticed a pouch of gunpowder and some silver beads in his belt, opposite the sabers. He was prepared for something that I wasn't. I simply brought my hand up from my coat, revealing the shining Bowie knife. He gave a hearty laugh.
That won't get you very far. If you know how to use this, I'll give it to you.
I shook my head. He motioned me after, leaving money on the bar for the young lady working, who shouted a thank you to him from across the room. He waved back as the door swung closed behind us. Now he and I stood alone in the pale lamplight from the single lonely flame above the tavern door. He pulled a canister from his pocket, striking a match on the tavern wall and lighting the wick he had just produced. I gasped, light shining in a bright circle from the canister, casting a beam to show our way. As Chambers adjusted a nozzle attached to it, the light grew brighter, better illuminating the greenery and the surrounding coastline. I don't think I've seen anything this bright since the sun went out. Chambers laughed at me like a father watching his child discover something new. He pivoted quickly, waving a hand at me to follow him down the narrow steps toward the docks.
"So you've heard about the island?"
he asked, the rough cobblestones trying to twist my ankles as we went. My hands were shaking as the docks began to shine below us, a few lonely lanterns keeping the darkness from the bay. "I heard one landed there," I replied, remembering the horror stories I had heard from those who went through the fall. Some said they fell where blood was shed. Others said it was God's judgment. I know the places where they fell got overrun with something before long.
"Something ain't the half of it,"
Chambers chuckled back. He had an oddly grim humor about going to the island. I could see the glow brighter now, though not enough to determine color. We finally reached a small boat on the docks, a smaller sailboat with a few oars attached at the sides. Chambers went up to the small lampposts at either end of the boat, lighting them from his torch and bathing the docks in bright light from the flames now burning high in the night. He adjusted knobs again, bringing the flames down slightly while moving small mirrors around them, adjusting their light in different directions.
"Most of the bastards are free to light, so they'll leave us alone as we cross. Come on now."
He climbed into the boat after I did, wavering a little as the water rocked us. It had been years since I'd been on any kind of water, but it came back naturally after a moment. He settled in and hoisted the sail above us, lighting a lantern atop its mast. Chambers settled in on the aft with the till, while I took a spot near the mid, looking back at him as he met my eyes with his single one. The deep blue caught me again, even in the dim light, as his face hardened in the flickering lantern's glow.
"Stars done a lot around here since it fell. You're going to see a lot that ain't natural."
He picked up a small pistol from a cabinet on the boat's side.
"Assuming one of them gets you and doesn't kill you right away, I will deliver one shot from this directly to your skull. No hesitation. I'm saving you from something worse than death."
What exactly are they? I couldn't comprehend what would be a worse fate than death, other than the horror stories of the war and how some lived injured on the battlefield for days. I had tried to stray around any of the starfall areas on the maps I had, and typically had safe passage all the way here, so I hadn't come across anything the other travelers spoke of.
"Dunno,"
Chambers grunted, guiding them along in the water, leaving the docks behind as wind caught the sails.
"No, I used to have some friends when I was younger and frontiering. Natives. Warned me about some of their old legends, and I'd rather have those than what's on this island."
I shivered. Cold wind blowing through the humid air brushed long, unkempt hair from my face as we crossed the gap from the mainland. Something breached the water nearby, letting out a small wail as the light illuminated it briefly before disappearing back to the depths.
"Pay it no mind, we're almost there. Now, if you look in that compartment on your right, you're going to find an old axe. I want you to hang on to that while we're in here. That thing got me off the island in the first place."
He glided us smoothly along the water, the island approaching ever closer in the dark. Now the glow of the island was brighter, a color somewhere between that deep blue ocean I remembered and the old lavender bushes that grew in our garden back home.
"Now, you gotta tell me some things before we get in."
I nodded.
"Who are we looking for? What was his name?"
He looked at me, setting that same blue eye that managed to stare into my soul better than any two ever had.
"And are you prepared to see what he might be now?" I'll help you look, and I will do my damnedest to protect you, but we will go no further than the crater's edge."
"Yes," I gulped, steeling my resolve as we coasted toward the shoreline, water splashing around as something peeked out at us from the waves. He was lighter-skinned, said his mama was a slave and daddy was, well, you know. He kept his hair short, though. I imagine it's grown out plenty since he's been gone all these years. Hazel eyes, like a pecan that ain't quite ripe yet. I stalled, stopping before I was too far into the small details. The little things I could recognize immediately upon seeing him. The little, beautiful details. He was missing half of his left pinky finger. Happened in a milling accident when he was a kid. I kept going, not noticing the change in Chambers' face. His face, the right side of his face, is scarred, pretty terribly. He told me it was because he tried to take a whipping for his mother, and his dad just went at him wherever he could get. He has them all down his arms and legs, too. They're darker than the rest of his skin, so he looks like he's got a net or something on all the time. He can't grow a full beard because of it either, so he has lines running through it where the scars are. Looked pretty comical when he was first growing it, but now I'm sure it's all over.
"Ezekiel,"
Chambers muttered, snatching me back from my memories with the sound of his name. "Do you know where he is?" I was immediately back to the present, adrenaline pumping with the most hope I'd felt in months. "Please tell me you do."
"Crap."
Chambers sat back against the boat as they began scraping onto the beach.
"Damn, kid. God. I'm sorry, I can't let you go in there. We're turning around."
My chest seized, breath refusing to move into my lungs. I couldn't control it when it suddenly broke out in heavy, short bursts as I tried desperately to breathe. Despite everything he had already told me, despite the now rapidly spiraling screams in my head telling me otherwise, I still needed to know if he was alive. What happened to him?
"God damn it all."
Chambers sighed as he stopped trying to steer the boat, allowing it to simply rest on the shore.
"Ezekiel was one of my privates. I was a lieutenant under General Sherman, in charge of the regiment with him in it. I was with him when the damn stars fell. We barely made it out in time, or we would have probably been killed when it hit the fort. Left a damn big crater in the ground. Things didn't change immediately, you know. Sure, sun disappeared in the blink of an eye, but at least we didn't get them right away."
"The creatures?" I asked, still unsure of what to say to him. I was desperately waiting for an answer to my first question, but he wanted to avoid it. "Did they kill him?"
"I wish they had,"
Chambers said back, giving me a solemn look of pity as tears welled in my eyes.
"Least then I could give you a straight answer. Should have gotten them out of there after the damn thing fell. They wanted us to stay and make sure nothing happened around it. I guess it was natural to be suspicious after Lincoln was killed, but goddammit, this wasn't the time. The damn star cracked about a day after it landed. Cursed things came pouring out of it. Not like anything I ever seen. Like it sprung a damn leak and was spraying out everywhere. I don't know how we missed it, but that thing, whatever was coming out of that thing, I've seen cannonballs hit people, and it wasn't that bad."
I gulped. He looked at the tree line up the beach briefly as a shriek rang through the night, coming from further into the island's overgrowth. It was then that I noticed the smell that quickly overpowered every other sense I felt. Death, 100-fold. I had smelled rotting carcasses of farm animals most of my life, discovered a few that had died before sitting in the hot Georgia summer for a few hours, and that would be like the finest lavender compared to this. It didn't faze him, still telling me of the horrors.
"I didn't see Ezekiel being hit, but the ones that were became something else when whatever it was went back to the star. Then it just started glowing, and soldiers started turning into damn nightmares all around. We got out of the fort, escaped the worst of them, and were able to kill a few smaller ones with that there axe."
He pointed to the one I was holding now, giving a small smile when he looked at it.
That thing cut quite a few down. Ezekiel was pretty handy with a sword, too. Took down as many as I did.
Chambers grew quiet again, focusing his eye on mine once more, not wavering for a moment.
Running through the woods, it was worse than any hell I heard preached about. Them boys, the ones that got hit, they just lost most of their color. Started getting these little wisps to them like they were... It wasn't smoke, not burning, but steam coming off of them, even if they were barely held together after the hit. They started twisting and stretching every which way after that. Saw some have bones splinter through, some just tore, but their faces kept smiling. Not a care in the world, happy as a pig in manure, smiling teeth and all. That's what stays with me. That's what Ezekiel held off when we got to the beach.
I let out a shaky breath, gulping back the pain welling behind my tongue and piercing deep down into my chest. So, he held them off while you ran.
I tried to grab him, kid, I really did. He just kept pushing more people in front of him onto the boats, and when there wasn't room, well, he stood right there, planted his blade in the sand, picked up a damn repeating carbine that someone dropped on the beach, and started going at it. We might have been dead if it hadn't been some miracle of timing. They were loading up excess ammo from the forts, so there was a whole damn barrel of the tubes the Spencers use. I saw Ezekiel reload the damn thing 12 times before they even got past the trees. He picked up his sword and just started going at him. Never seen a man use a rifle with one hand and a sword in the other, but goddamn, he was a fighter. The lights receded too much, and last I saw, one grabbed him.
He stopped here, locking his eye with mine again.
I don't know if he died, but they took him. I've been on this island a few times since, cleaning up bodies and scavenging, but I ain't seen no sign of him. Not a corpse, nor one of them bastards.
So you don't know that he's dead? I asked, feeling a small pang of hope. I grabbed onto it, holding tight and not letting go, no matter how hard it clawed to get away. He just sighed as he stood up, bringing the sails down, opened a small compartment alongside his seat, pulled out a small canister, and tossed it to me along with a matchbook. I looked in the flickering lanterns at the matchbook, looking at him in surprise. Thought you couldn't get white phosphorus anymore. It had some bad health effects.
Son, I'm more concerned about keeping my insides in me, all right? Now, you see where that twists at the bottom? This is a replacement.
He tossed me another, smaller canister, about half the size of the one I already had.
Screw that one in when that one runs out. You keep that lid at all times, hear me? Axe out, too. I didn't see him die, and I figured out enough with you by now to know you ain't gonna leave until you know.
I stood up quickly, eager and hoping to find him hiding somewhere out there in the dense brush. I struck one of the matches quickly after ripping it from the book, lighting the small wick on the canister he gave me. The match was bright as is, but whatever was in the canister burned brighter than the sun right in my hand. I almost dropped it in the bottom of the boat out of surprise as he reached back in and took it from me, popping the small casing around it up to focus the beam ahead of us. He handed it back to me as I got out of the boat, leading the way up to the tree line as waves crashed behind us.
I'm going to ask you one more time, but I already know what you're going to say. Are you sure you want to go in here?
I could only nod as Chambers nodded back to me, situating his lantern canister in a small pocket on his chest before drawing his cavalry swords, one in each hand.
Stay right with me and do not stray. We're going to try the star. If they dragged him back, that's where he'll be.
I followed him into the dense forest. Nettles and branches whipped at me from every direction with even the slightest movement. Chambers hacked away at some, but not many gave way to his swings, rather bouncing back before coming back on me. How do you know he'll be at the Star?"
"They all go to the Star,"
he grunted. His bright light was illuminating the way in front of us, but the lights from the boat had long disappeared through the trees. I could hear something off to my left cackle, shrill and breaking like an obnoxious drunk. It quickly turned from a cackle into a scream as it rushed closer.
"Shine your damn light around us. Keep them off."
I did as he commanded immediately, fearing for my life as I swung my light in the direction of the noise. I briefly caught a glimpse of pale, stretched skin unfolding from a slender body before its mouth opened wide and sharp teeth let loose a screech. I could barely comprehend what it was I saw before swinging my axe, missing. It leaped upwards, off into the higher branches and away from exposure. My heart caught in my chest as I began wildly flashing my light all around us, gripping the axe tighter. What the hell was that?
"A damn judgment from God if I ever seen one,"
Chambers replied, leading me into a small clearing in the forested area and pulling the canister from his belt, sliding back the shade and letting the light bathe our surroundings. A calamity of hisses, shrieks, and screams of anger and pain poured forth from every direction around the clearing, branches rustling as terrors retreated from the light's burn. I could barely tell now, but there was a low glow through the trees, coming from a ways on from us. Maybe another 5 minutes walk?
"I'm gonna ask you again, are you sure? Because you've seen what's out here, and I can promise if he's one of them, you don't want to see that."
He could be one of those? I felt like I was going to throw up thinking about that now, picturing him over that pasty, white-eyed thing that had briefly been seen in my light. I had to steel myself again, catching sight of something else staring at us through the tree line. This one was on all fours, crouching behind a fallen tree as I think it stared at us. The eyes were just slits, almost like the middle of a snake's eye, but glowing purple. It licked its lips when it noticed that I had picked up on it, smiling, a mouth with only 4 sharp teeth before curling fingers in a wave. I shivered, almost losing my nerve again before nodding to Chambers. "I need this."
"He loved you,"
Chambers said to me, looking toward the pale light. I looked in surprise, taken aback at what he said, while terrified he had figured it out. He just looked back at me.
"I can tell you Ezekiel mentioned you a few times in passing. While we would all talk about what we had back home some nights, he would tell us about you."
I felt my heart drop, hands shaking more now in the bright light than they had when I was sitting in the dark with whatever creatures were looking at me. "He told you?"
"Son, a love that strong ain't something I'll shame you for. We could all be so lucky," he said,
picking up the lantern again and setting the shade back to guide us again as I adjusted mine to give me more feeling of safety. I was still shaking, but that was the best thing I could have heard. At least I knew he wouldn't leave me here on the island, unless he broke through my thoughts again.
"Black, white, man, woman, it don't matter. We had more love, the good Lord might not have rained the heavens down."
"Still think it was a god that did this?" I asked, moving forward along with him through the underbrush and trees, the glow growing brighter with each step, even overtaking his lamp's bright white light. I don't know if I ever believed in him before all this.
"If it weren't God, that scares me more,"
Chambers replied, as we came upon another small clearing, the fallen star in the center now visible to me in full glory. The star was nearly taller than the trees around it, giving off the same glow I could first see from the water of purples and blues. It didn't come out in beams like regular light, but more like steam from it, floating in luminescent wisps through the air as the light dispersed, turning from the deeper hues to lighter as they ascended before covering the surroundings. It was beautiful, a celestial body right here, a mere stone's throw away. I didn't notice the things around it at first, almost invisible as I could see straight through them. their ethereal shapes outlined as the glow pulsed over them. "It's," I whispered, still gazing at the star open-mouthed as the comprehension of the beings hadn't hit me just yet. "It's like something from a dream."
"A damned nightmare,"
Chambers replied, pulling a small scope from his pocket and holding it to his eye, singling out the ones gathered all around the star, worshipping at its altar as it breathed there. He continued looking as I gazed on, transfixed at the layers of cracks that had spread through the star intricately, almost fearfully carved in the surface of the celestial body as it breathed the faint light in and out. As I tore my eyes away from it and looked to the surrounding beings, I noticed the faces and remembered Chambers' warning. I knew that smile from anywhere, a gap between his two front teeth that always caused a small whistle when he talked while overexcited. His eyes and skin were the same translucent as all the others, almost like he was an old ghost from a story he told me one night. Chambers must have noticed him at the same time.
"Ah, crap."
He let out a sigh of resignation, putting the scope away and redrawing one of his swords.
"Kid, I'm not letting you throw your life away. I know you've lost a lot, but I promise he's not Ezekiel anymore. Let's make it back to the boat, and I'll buy you some drinks at the tavern. You can tell me how he was before the war."
I felt him bump my shoulder but didn't notice, still transfixed on Ezekiel's smiling face bathed in the star's glow. He was so joyful, just like I remembered him from before he left to fight, before he left and became this thing. I saw that same smile as he told me stories, me writing them down on paper so we could take them to the presser nearby and share the adventures we created together. He, the jovial creator, me, the enraptured recorder. I had to see that smile up close again. I turned to Chambers, handing him back the axe and canister he had given me as he tried to turn me back to the trees, back to safety. "I'm sorry, I can't. I know he's gone, there's no point if I go back without him." I was crying as I said it, Chambers relaxing his grip and letting me take the tense steps forward toward my beloved, who was taken from me before I could ever say goodbye. He smiled at me as I got close. I looked back to Chambers, nodding. He sighed and waved goodbye solemnly, making his way back into the trees, fleeing the accursed island and its inhabitants, soon to be one more. The purple-eyed creature leapt at him from a nearby tree as he walked away, but he turned in time to slice it clean through. He kept walking, adjusting the light as he left. Ezekiel was still smiling as he came to me, an iridescent hand taking mine with warmth and embrace, just as I remembered. I smiled at him as he led me to the star, all the way up to a small opening almost at eye level. He smiled back at me before guiding my head to the opening in the star, to gaze inside at what was causing this magnificence. I felt excited now, with the prospect of being with Ezekiel once more, alongside the beauty of the star that had me enraptured. I gladly looked into the small opening, gasping at vast fields of stars and suns stretched, bright dandelions of light, for an eternity before me. All time seemed to stop, and my smile wouldn't fade. Nothing would. I pulled my head back to the open air of night, meeting Ezekiel's smiling eyes with mine. As I embraced him, and he did the same for me, I felt the infinite stars from within suddenly burst forth into my consciousness. The most intense feeling I had ever experienced, as every emotion overcame my body, before being overcome by nothing but intense warmth. Love. Ezekiel is here. I am Ezekiel. Ezekiel is me. We no longer had use for a name in the great field of stars, twin nebulas burning bright in each other's glow forever now, with no worry as to who may see in the infinite sea of the cosmos, far away from their life before, but never more at home with each other. That was May Fallen Stars Guide Us Home by Ross Tyson.
There are battlefields that take your life and others that just hold it hostage.
And Tybee Island? Let's just say some stars fall on purpose. Next up, a tale for the tech heads. A freelance editor takes on a strange job, editing footage from a haunted house reality show. But when the footage starts editing him back, he realizes the haunting may not be scripted.
No jump scares, no CGI, just raw data corrupted by something old and watching. This is Technically Haunted by Ross Tyson, performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. I'm about to break so many NDAs just posting here. There's something really strange going on, though, and people are dead, so something needs to happen. I'm a freelance video editor, and a few weeks ago I got a call about an indie production working on one of those Big Brother-style game shows. This time, the twist was that the guests were going to be in a haunted house, unbeknownst to them. Look, I'm not here to debate the morality or ethics of that. The producers said no one would be in danger and they'd be the ones pulling the strings as ghosts. Yeah, I don't think they knew what they were getting into. Whatever. I needed the money, so I took the job. Now, I don't know if I'll even make it through the next week. The house in question was massive, with enough room for everyone to maintain their own space. 8 main rooms, a huge kitchen, a separate dining room, a separate den and foyer, along with a pool/hot tub combo out back. Honestly, it would be a dope house to live in, except for the ritual suicides and subsequent mass murders that happened in the 70s. That kind of throws off the vibe, no matter how low the real estate price. From the research I conducted before taking the job, this house was once home to a major tech mogul in the 90s. He was going to compete with Gates and Jobs and had all kinds of genius going for him. And then one day he just broke. Said he found the truth of the world and was going to break us all out of the manufactured reality we live in. Dude wrote a ton of material about finding some precursor to humanity. From everything he said, it sounded like he was a few years early to the Matrix. Either way, he took it to the Jonestown route and offered his 30 or so followers in a ritual, setting them up in a damn firing limbo line, with each of them shooting another in the head to dwindle their numbers. Dark stuff, and apparently the mogul, Shane Pike, was never seen again. Nobody knows if he got taken in or maybe legitimately ascended, but odds are he's dead. Everything started simple enough. The contestants, 6 of them, were in one haunted house. The producers, Saul and Shayna, and I, would alternate shifts in a nearby trailer watching a live feed from inside the house at all times. From there, we'd mark moments on the tape, saving them to compile into the show after it was done. Not the strangest gig I've taken to pay the rent. The first few days were pretty normal, to be honest. Everyone settled in: Frank, Indy, Carol, Megan, Pete, and Jacob. All are in their late 20s to mid-30s and, of course, attractive to ensure drama pops off. Don't fix what ain't broken, as they say. So far, they were all amicable, and not really getting on each other's nerves yet. That was until the 3rd night when everything went weird. It was maybe 11 at night, pitch dark outside with no moonlight to spare, and almost everyone in the house was asleep except Pete, who was making his way into the kitchen for something to eat. I was on watch with the extra huge camera display up in front of me and at least 30 different angles to see every bit of their lives. Think they only stopped short of putting cameras in the bathrooms due to privacy concerns. Pete made it down to the kitchen okay, rummaging around cabinets for a minute before finally getting to the fridge. The camera I was watching from faced the refrigerator directly from above, so I could only see him from behind when he opened it. Static started humming over the audio. He could hear it too, turning away from the fridge and shouting at something nearby. The static grew louder, constant hum in the audio feed, as if it was about to cut out completely. He reached into the fridge after deciding whatever was there wasn't worth worrying about, and that's when it went wrong. The camera glitched for a moment, a figure popping up right next to Pete, almost as tall as him but contorted in odd ways. Too many edges and angles to be a real person, but it looked like there were parts of them stretching outward. The static roared to thunder and the figure disappeared. If Pete noticed it, he didn't even get a chance to make a sound. The camera glitched again before something dragged him away, straight through the back door into the hallway, before he could scream. As quickly as it happened, it was over. The kitchen was still, with the door swinging slowly shut on shelves of food inside. I almost immediately lost my mind, switching between every camera I could to see if he just ran somewhere else or I was hallucinating. Nope. Pete was nowhere, not a trace of him in the whole house. Poof, gone. It's like he went through a whole other doorway because he never even appeared on the hallway camera, just a black square of darkness in the doorway. Naturally, I called Saul because one of our damn contestants disappeared from thin air and he was over in a few minutes. He told me he'd handle it. I just needed sleep. I know what I saw, Saul, and it wasn't because I was tired. Nevertheless, he kicked me out for the night, telling me to get some rest. I didn't have much choice, so I went back to the hotel. When I came back in the morning, Saul told me he'd found Pete, though he would no longer be taking part in the contest, citing what Saul said was a family emergency. In hindsight, yeah, it sounds fishy. At the time, I wasn't going to argue, though. They told me there was network interest for the show, so that might mean I could have a steady gig, and I wasn't about to throw that away over a glitched camera. He announced to the rest of the house and had them complete their journal entries for the day, including their feelings. All the basic, hope he's okay stuff, you know. Things got weirder that night, though, and I don't think they believed it for long. Everyone gathered for dinner that night, sitting together in the dining room. Drinks were being poured and everyone was talking, laughing, chatting about life outside the house. Indy was the first to mention strange happenings. Hey, so I was in the bathroom last night, and the lights suddenly flickered really badly. Was one of you playing a prank on me? She asked the entire table. Nobody came forward. Everyone just looked at each other, unsure. I mean, I'm not mad. It's just when the lights flickered, I got one of those weird horror movie experiences. It looked like someone was just standing beside me. There was a big burst of static, too. I got goosebumps. Everyone else still maintained their innocence, telling her that there wasn't anything to worry about. From the dining room camera, I could see the entire table and into the kitchen through the doorway. If I hadn't been paying attention already, I would have noticed someone walking through the door into the room. Just a note, for being a relatively low-budget seeming production, Saul and Shayna had sprung for the good cameras, and I mean good. These things were capable of 8K resolution, and the monitors were able to match it. That's the part that made me concerned about what happened next. The figure walking in was like God used the least amount of polygons available. Only a basic demo of a person. Even worse, there weren't any actual features on the face, just a smiling, ear-to-ear grin with wide eyes that looked as if it was pressed on flat. I felt my skin grow cold as it stood in the doorway, staying there for almost 15 seconds, surveying the room. I almost fell out of the chair when it turned to me, face suddenly extending on its neck toward the camera. Apparently the others in the house took notice as well because everyone jumped up screaming. My screen glitched out again, the horrible face briefly popping up in front of me, not just obscuring everything else in the camera, but almost popping through the screen. Everyone in the dining room was freaking out, all standing as Carol ran out of the room screaming. Indy was pale, literally having just seen a ghost, and Frank looked ready to fight. Meanwhile, I'm shaking, trying to figure out what the hell I just saw. It took me a moment to realize the audio feed was coming in again, with Frank shouting for answers to whoever was listening. All the noise must have woken Shayna in the next room. She came out asking what the matter was and what caused the loud noise. If she understood anything I was babbling about, more power to her. But eventually, she said she would just go speak to the guests herself, assuring me it was one of the scares they had set up. All part of the act, supposedly. I don't buy it. It's been a few days since, without much incident, but I think things are only going to get worse. I've seen a few weird things here and there, glitched pixels moving in some of the cameras, and occasional static where there shouldn't be any interference. Yesterday, one of the couches scooted across the floor around midnight. If these were scares set up by the producers, they didn't bother making me aware. I'll keep a running update if anything happens. Right now, I'm choosing to believe it's just their setup. Hopefully all fake. Something's gnawing at me, though, telling me that there's something else behind how casual they are about this. There's no way something popping out of my screen was just some kind of glitch. Nope. This place is messed up. And I mean seriously messed up. My career is probably done if I make it out of here. Jacob died today. For sure, died. I saw it happen. He'd been staying in his room since the dining room incident, almost catatonic after seeing it. Can't say I blamed him, considering the damn thing almost got to me, too, over the monitor. The others were trying to check on him, but he didn't really want anything to do with the rest. At some point, he turned on the TV, though Saul and Shayna only allowed a couple of streaming services for entertainment. Look, I'm not one to judge someone's tastes in movies or anything, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead. That said, the Spawn movie from the 90s was a hell of a choice. Maybe it was a comfort thing. Who knows? He didn't make it far before the television started glitching out, screen pixelating. I was watching the other camera at the moment, but it caught my eye when the pixelation started because it was extending out of the TV. Spawn was still playing, yet this thing was somehow moving through the actual space in front of the television. There wasn't even a way to tell what the hell it was. Just pixelation in the air, constantly changing colors like a digital stream. I was fixated, wanting to shout and wake him up, but I was frozen in my seat, blood running cold. I felt like this thing was aware of me, like I was being watched as some kind of dare. I couldn't shake the chill that was settling over me, making me shake from the cold. It kept extending from the television, stopping right before the bed as Jacob stared in total horror. He must have been as frozen as I was, sitting with his mouth open, but no scream coming out. Crawling backward, pressing himself into the wall wasn't enough to save him. The pixels stopped for a moment before leaping forward immediately toward him. I saw his face open in shock as it pierced his chest, lifting him up against the wall as it rose up. He grabbed at it, only clawing at the glimmering air in front of him. The tendril suddenly retreated back into the television, snapping Jacob back in it with it. I saw his body fold in half backward as it hit the edge of the television, the tendril still pulling on him. Over the mics, I could hear his spine snapping, probably ending any pain he might have felt if he were still alive. As the tendril moved back from the television, yanking him back one more time to make sure everything came through, Indy must have heard the bump because she ran in, out of breath, from the next room over. What she found was an empty room, terrible movie still playing on the television, with no trace that anyone was there otherwise. The sheets were bunched up like they'd been left behind that morning in a rush, but otherwise everything was in place. Indy stood in front of the television, back to it, looking at the bed where Jacob once was. I was breathless, unsure of what to do as I watched things unfold. Neither Saul nor Shayna were here right now either, so there was nobody in the room with me to tell to go help. I was afraid that if I looked away from the camera, something else would happen. Whatever happened didn't wait until I looked away, though. Indy was grabbed by the neck and yanked backward through the television in a somewhat less violent manner than Jacob. She was gone in seconds, nothing to mark she was there. 3 contestants were now gone with no clue where they may have gone. I called Saul, freaking out, and of course it went to his damn voicemail. Okay, try Shayna next. Nothing. Voicemail again, except this time I got an inbox full message with it. I looked up from my phone trying to see if anything had changed on the screen. Another figure was standing in the room now. Not one I recognized, though. Someone dressed a few decades out of style, tall, with messy brown hair falling over thick glasses. He turned to me, lifting a finger to his lips in a hush sign, looking directly through the camera at me. Pixelation hit again, and he disappeared, totally gone with nothing left. Shayna finally called me back then, asking what was so frantic that I called both of them. Super bitchy in hindsight. Then she told me that I'm freaking out over nothing again, emphasizing that they're in control of everything and will handle any issues that happen. She reminded me that they have pre-planned scares that will mess with the guests, but that's not reassuring at all. When I tried to press her for a list of scares so I could at least be prepared, she said she didn't want me to spoil it for any of the contestants left. This has to be a prank on me, right? One of those hidden camera reality shows, but on some meta level where I'm the joke? I don't like it, even if it's not some cruel joke. There's no way the sound I heard his back make was fake. I finally made the decision. Not gonna lie, I was kind of expecting the outcome, but it is what it is, I guess. I called the police and told them I had just witnessed a possible murder and they were on their way. Took probably 2 hours for them to get there, even then. Gotta love the police system in America. When they finally got there, Saul had arrived around the same time. He intercepted them before I even realized they were there, pulling up to the main house and waiting at the doorway like a goddamn realtor ready to make the sale. He assured the cops there was nothing wrong, showed them the filming permits, and laughed it off, saying that maybe they'd make it on television. That seemed to get one of them pretty excited, saying his wife would be so jealous to hear. Then they got back in the squad car and left. Not a thing was done, and nobody in the house was even aware of what had happened. Saul came up to the editing trailer after they left, a look of disappointment on his face, like I was a kid caught sneaking out. This jackass gave me a legitimate, I'm not mad, just disappointed speech, and told me I could go for the day. He'd take over. I want to leave. I want to get the hell out of this place. I don't like anything that's going on. There's this constant feeling of cold in my skin that won't go away, like I've got permanent goosebumps. Hair standing on end as if I were in the middle of a storm of static. Nothing made it go away. I can't leave, though. I can't let the 3 left in there meet the same fate. I'm going to do something about it, but I'll have to wait until Saul and Shayna are gone to do anything. If I get out of this place, I'll update. Wish me luck. Screw that house. Screw Saul and Shayna. Screw this job. I'm going back to a call center. I no longer care about editing. I formed a plan last night lying in my hotel bed. Honestly, I was just waiting to hear that Saul and Shayna had canceled my stay, since it was on their dime. And thankfully, things seemed to go on just like normal. Guess they needed me more than they wanted me gone. Shayna switched out when I got there, just giving me a glare when I came in before she left. Guess she'd heard what had happened. Whatever. It made things easier for me since she left so quickly. Unfortunately, that's where the easy parts would stop. I was planning to wait for a few minutes and watch the cameras, just to make sure neither of them was coming back. Maybe I was trying to steal my nerves too, keeping a watchful eye over the remaining 3 guests while contemplating my next move. They obviously were on edge at this point, even just from their body language. Must have figured out something strange was going on at this point. At one point, Frank walked outside, producing a cigarette from his pocket and lighting up by the pool. It was only a moment before the entire pool began shimmering like moonlight hitting it in waves. The dog figure began rising out of the water. Frank didn't notice right away, only turning after whatever the figure was had risen above the surface in the middle of the pool. I was out of the trailer on the ground before I realized I'd moved. All I could think about was that he wouldn't be there by the time I got to the door, but I still had to try, right? The dark figure rising from the pool looked formless, soaked as if wearing long robes, water sliding from its surface. The air around it was pixelating, distorting itself in the screen. I feared what I'd find when I got there. Nobody opened the door as I furiously knocked, so I took it into my own hands, running around the back toward the pool area. Small fence had a rusted latch, thankfully, or running into it full force probably would have hurt a lot more, though I wasn't feeling much pain as I took in the sight before me. The entire pool was bubbling, the water emitting massive amounts of steam as it boiled. Frank's back was still to it, so I'm assuming he hadn't noticed yet. It took only seconds for everything to go straight to hell. The figure rising from the pool snapped a tendril forward, almost making the burning water come alive. It must have been still so incredibly hot because Frank screamed out in pain as it wrapped around his torso. He was jerked back so hard that the force of it made something snap inside him. Barely a scream came out as his flesh was boiled, sloughing from his limbs in the pixelating water. "No!" I screamed, before I realized, angry at myself, that I was too slow to save him. That meant Megan and Carol were the only ones left, and I had no idea where they were. That was the least of my worries, though, because the pool was still boiling, water starting to splash out from the ferocity of the frothing, steaming Frank's stew. His body was bloated and red now, his blood mixing into the water as it boiled. In the middle of the pool above him, the form began pulsating, taking shape into the same terror that had taken the others. The glitch began moving toward me, gliding over the surface of the water as it kept absorbing stray parts of Frank's flesh, now pixelating in the air as it floated toward the terror. It was becoming clearer with every bit that attached, taking a more human-like shape. The smiling, painted-on face stared at me as it moved forward, hunger in the static eyes. It was only by dumb luck that I fell backwards out of the gate, scrambling back out of the gate. I rushed as fast as I could back around to the front of the house, still determined to get the women out alive if I could. Instead of waiting for someone to open the door, though, I picked up one of the decorative stones lining the garden, hurling it with all my might through one of the large windows out front. "The hell?" A voice from inside, Megan's, I think, shouted faintly as the glass shattered into dangerous blades. Even the sting of glass cutting my arms and legs as I climbed through faded into the background, my heart beating with adrenaline. Both women were standing in the living room area staring at me as I fell to the ground on the other side. Carol was holding a lamp for self-defense. "Who the hell are you?" I couldn't really blame them for being scared. I know I looked like a madman breaking into this house. Maybe they thought it was part of the show. Likely they had no idea at this point that this wasn't really a show. "You lead to Neve, now!" I managed to gasp out, blood running down my arm in warm trails thanks to the glass. "Frank's gone. It's on its way, please!" It was too late. I could see the glitch moving in from behind them, passing right through the doorway like it wasn't there, leaving scorch marks around it like an electrical fire. Megan went stiff, falling over like she'd been hit by a taser. Before she could even hit the ground, the glitch pulled her in, absorbing her without a sound. It turned to Carol, frozen until the last moment, when she jumped away from it, running for the door. She burst through, myself following close to escape from the damn thing. I didn't make it 3 steps off the porch before I could feel cold steel pressing against my forehead. Hard. Saul stood in front of me, pistol in hand, aimed at my head. Nearby, Carol was in the same position, held up by Shayna. She was crying, hands over her head, begging Shayna for her life. "I told you not to interfere. All you had to do was watch the footage," Saul said, putting his finger to the trigger. "You were supposed to help us show the world." "You're killing people, man. What the hell is this place? What are you?" I was shaking. I've never been in a position like this before, staring death down the barrel. I see why people piss themselves in fear now, because it almost happened. "We're being good disciples," he said simply, motioning with the gun for us to go back inside. "Go to the pool. We'll hand you over ourselves." "I can't wait to see him again," Shayna said, glee in her voice. She kicked Carol forward, making her fall on the porch. Despite that, she still scrambled up, working her way toward the back door. The glitch was nowhere to be seen, with only the burn marks on the door to show it was ever there. When we finally got to the pool, Frank's cooked body was floating on the surface, eyes melting and flesh exposed on his skin. It looked like other parts of his body, still under the water, were just bone at this point, muscle barely hanging on. The water began boiling again, bubbles building from the bottom in anticipation. I noticed the temperature and jet control for the hot tub nearby, flickering with the number display constantly changing, finally zeroing out with an error. I had an idea, but I wasn't sure if it would work. Saul and Shayna came in behind us, dropping their guns down to their sides as we stood behind the rolling water. Saul was maybe 5 feet from me, close to the temperature control. I could see the figure forming in the middle of the pool again, rising from under the water. "I'm sorry it took so long, Father," Shayna said, looking at the silhouette. "We have the last of them and an extra just in case. They have to let you go now." The figure from the pool began to rise, another face forming in it. Though I couldn't quite tell, it looked like the same figure that made the shush sign to me yesterday, but it was emerging from the glitch as it moved closer. The water was boiling even hotter now, steam rising fast from the surface. I readied myself. "Oh, my faithful," the figure said, gliding forward as the glitch still enveloped him. "Thank you for returning." Saul and Shayna were smiling, waiting for him to reach the solid ground and anoint them. It was quite the shock they got when, instead, the glitch grabbed 2 tendrils out, the boiling water quickly piercing them through the stomach, scalding them from the inside out. Their mouths were open in horror as his face came closer, flashing and pixelating between human and the low-res, drawn-on texture from the glitch. "I didn't ask you to, though," the figure said, malice now dripping from his voice as it distorted with static. "It's quite like it on the other side. It's quiet, solitary. I would rather not leave." They began to break down, Saul and Shayna decaying into red pixels in the air that flew toward the glitch. I took my chance while they were otherwise distracted, making a dive for Saul's gun that was now on the ground. The glitch only looked at me, the textured face showing an eerie smile. "You don't have to be violent. That won't work on me anyway now," he said, still looking at the gun in my hand. I aimed it at the wall right in the direction of the control monitor. He must have recognized what I was doing. "Oh, go ahead. Like I said, I don't really want to leave." It whipped Saul and Shayna back into the glitch, tendrils retracting quickly to absorb them into the digitized, glitching body. I pulled the trigger, hitting the monitor right on the screen, making a small electrical fire start. As power faded from the box, the glitch began breaking down, water slowing as the temperature cooled. He was just smiling as his face disappeared in a storm of pixels, digitizing into thin air. Carol was still sobbing on the ground as I threw the gun away, causing it to land in the pool. I made my way over, offering a hand to help her up. The fire was starting to grow nearby, spreading along the wall. As both of us walked from the house, still shaking from the ordeal, flames began to lick inside, from the living area to the other rooms, enveloping everything in moments. We left into the night, letting the funeral pyre burn itself into cinders as fire truck lights lit up in the distance. That was Technically Haunted by Ross Tyson.
You know it's bad when even the glitches are trying to kill you.
At least ghosts used to creak floorboards. Now they're on codecs.
If you enjoyed tonight's journey through broken time, malfunctioning ghosts, and voices echoing from beneath the waves, you're in luck. There's more waiting for you in the patrons area. Extended, ad-free episodes featuring bonus tales and exclusive horrors you won't hear anywhere else.
It's just $7.99 a month, or save big with the yearly plan, and it gives you full access to every story, every scream, without a single commercial break. You'll be supporting indie horror and making sure the doors to the dark stay open.
To join, just head to simplyscarypodcast.com and click the Patrons tab, or go straight to chillingtalesfordarknights.com to become a member. Come closer to the stories, if you dare.
From all of us here at Chilling Entertainment, thank you for your support.
If tonight's episode proved anything, it's that reality doesn't just bend, it breaks. A ritual that hides a darker inheritance. A battlefield where the stars still fall. A cursed edit bay with footage no one should see. A basement archive filled with static and secrets. And a deep-sea dive into something that might not be a god, but certainly plays one.
Tonight reminded us that horror isn't always found in the dark. Sometimes it hides in the familiar. Old family tapes, childhood traditions, the hum of electronics, the echoes of grief, and waits for you to blink, to pause, to believe.
If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our parent channel, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, on YouTube, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new nightmare.
And if your craving for darkness goes even deeper, swing by my other show, Otis Jiry's Tales from Duskwood, where a full season of haunting stories awaits. You'll find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you haunt your ears.
We also want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and tell us which story stuck with you tonight, or which one made you reconsider ever watching old VHS tapes again.
And let's not forget to thank the extraordinary author behind tonight's descent into uncertainty, Ross Tyson. His new collection, When Reality Tears, is available for pre-order now on Amazon, and believe me, this is just a taste of what's in store.
So the next time your basement hums, your timeline glitches, or you feel like your memories don't quite match up,
remember, some realities weren't meant to hold together.
Sleep well, listeners.
If you can. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Scary Stories Told in the Dark, a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com today to learn more about our network and our other amazing storytelling programs. Tonight's program was hosted, and its featured stories performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. Selected stories have been adapted with the kind permission of their respective authors. Original music provided by Luke Hodgkinson and Jesse Cornett. Sound design and final mixing and mastering provided by executive producer and director Craig Groshek. Program's artwork and logo by David Romero. If you're looking for some fresh tales on a daily basis while waiting for the next podcast, check out my YouTube channel, the Otis Jiry channel, and my extensive collection of narrated tales there. Simply search on YouTube by my name, and you'll find me. And don't forget to subscribe and press the bell notification icon to get my latest releases. Got a scary tale of your own that you'd like performed? I take submissions. Email it to me today at otis@simplyscarypodcast.com to have your terrifying tome considered for production in a future episode of this show. That's OTIS@simplyscarypodcast.com. If you've enjoyed what you heard on tonight's program and are joining us on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to us to be sure you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review and a comment. Your feedback means a lot to me. You can also follow Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and yours truly on Facebook to connect anytime and get the latest updates on this and other programs and my channel. If you're listening on the Chilling Tales for Dark Nights YouTube channel, do us a favor and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon for ctfdn as well to get more spooky tales from me and the crew and another episode of this program each and every Wednesday. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button to tell us how we're doing and leave a kind word or a request. And don't forget to visit us at chillingtalesfordarknights.com and consider supporting the team by becoming a patron. In addition to helping us out, you'll get exclusive access to our audio archive and ad-free downloads of all your favorite stories, including those you've heard on this program. As for me, I'll be back next Wednesday with more terrifying tales to keep you up all night. But that's all right. Who needs sleep anyway?